Maybe we're just gaslighting you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that. Or we will be discussing that later.
Hello, and welcome to Spooky Sips, where we put our love of horror movies into a podcast and sip some spirits along the way. I'm one of your hosts, Yvette. I'm here with my co-hosts, Laura and Brianna. And today, we also have a special guest, friend and sister of the pod, Nicole.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so we just finished watching What Lies Beneath, which around here is a family favorite. This time Nicole chose the movie for us. We'll get into that in a minute. But if you haven't seen this movie, that's a crime. You should go see it. But essentially, it's about the wife of a university scientist who believes that her lakeside home is haunted by a ghost. Or is she just losing her mind? Dun, dun, dun.
Classic.
So, Nicole, why did you choose this movie?
Really, this is one of my favorite movies, and I feel like it's one of the movies that no matter how many times I have seen it, I love it each and every time. The scares, the jumps, the thrills that are in it get me every time, and I've probably seen it 20 times at least, and it never gets old.
Yeah, same.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the first time you watched it?
Ooh, well, it came out, and I probably didn't see it in theaters, but like shortly after, because I don't remember seeing it in theaters. But I just remember loving it. There was something about the elegance of Michelle Pfeiffer's character.
Oh,
I think
so
she
good.
just has this, like, I don't know, she's very like upper class,
Yes.
elegant, but she comes across as so relatable at the same time.
Exactly.
Just very, I just fell in love with the movie from the beginning.
I aspire to someday have her level of class and beauty.
Oh, I never will.
She's so
good. I never will, but I can keep trying, right?
Just the way that she makes it look so effortless, the way that she keeps her home and her flowers, and she plays the cello, and it's just
right. And apparently she learned to actually play the cello, because I think it was going to be a bigger part of the movie where they would have her playing more stuff. So they had like the second chair of, I think it was the Los Angeles Symphony, basically coach her during her lunch. And so she like caught onto it really quick. Like apparently she was a really fast learner with it. So like she can just do it all.
That's wild.
She can just do it all.
I wonder if she kept it up. If Michelle Pfeiffer kept up her cello playing.
Michelle, if you're listening,
let
us know.
Let us know, Michelle. We love you. Please be our next guest.
I do wish that there had been a little bit more of her playing, because they do make a really big deal out of it, how it was such a part of her life. And then, she does play it at one point, but that's really the only time in the movie. I wonder if there were any edits to it where there were scenes where she played it more and they cut it out for some reason.
Yeah, where they have her friend talk about, I forget what her friend's name is, but when she's talking at the dinner that they're having, and she's like, oh, I would just cry listening to her play. I know. I first thought, like, I want to hear this. I want to cry while watching Michelle Pfeiffer play the cello.
Yes, same. So obviously, I think it seems like we've all seen this movie before. If you had to estimate how many times we have each seen this movie, because I think I did see it in the theater when it came out.
Oh.
So, and then, absolutely loved it. But then since watched it, we probably had like a DVD of it and watched it so many times. I would have to say I've probably seen this movie 15 times.
Oh my gosh.
I think I've probably seen it at least 20, honestly.
Yeah.
I
would
would
seen
say
it like 3 times.
Oh. I would say I've probably seen it 20 to 25 times.
Because if it came out in 2000, and it's now the year 2023, I've seen it at least once a year.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's one of my, and it doesn't even have to be around, the spooky season, Halloween, but typically that's when I'll be in the mood to watch it. Yeah. But yeah, I would say it's one of those ones where about once a year, I'm in the mood.
Yep.
I'm in the mood to watch it. So
Yeah.
this was a real treat.
Some repeat.
Like you said, there are some movies that you do just want to kind of watch during like spooky season or leading up to that. But there is something about this movie that I could watch in any season.
Agreed.
I like to watch it in the summer when it's, you know, kind of like a cool night where the breeze is blowing in and it's just a little, you know, dark and you kind of get in a spooky mood. But I also like watching it in the fall, which is when this is set. But really, I could watch this movie any time of year and absolutely enjoy every moment of it.
Agreed.
Yep.
All right, so maybe we should just jump into it. I think this movie can be broken down into parts.
Right, because there's really just kind of the one main death that well, potentially the two. But there's not really a lot of deaths we can break this down by.
No.
We kind of just gotta do it act by act.
Yeah.
So I love the way it starts out with the kind of like low tone and the murky water where just then the title, like the letters of the title come to be, and you see kind of shadows of the face in the water. The
music is very ethereal during that part. It just has this tone to it that sets the mood right from the get-go.
The next thing that I wrote down in my notes, and I don't even remember because normally I watch the movies so much closer to when we record, but I watched this a couple weeks ago. At one point, I think maybe Norman. So the main character's name is Claire and her husband's name is Norman. So at one point, Norman, I think, asks her about something and she just goes, 11 o'clock. She's staring out of the window and she just sounds so detached. Like even before any of the haunting or the suspicion of the neighbor's death comes to be, she's just like already a little bit detached.
Yeah, something's off from the start, which again, Michelle Pfeiffer is just so good. Like, how can we tell that much about her?
Yes, she's an absolute
But can. So like, it is. She's going about her morning. She's getting herself ready, you know, her daughter ready. And you do get the sense, okay, daughter's leaving for college. This is going to be a tough day, but she's handling it. But it is that time where, you know, he says we've got to leave in order to not hit traffic. And the way she says 11 o'clock is completely different from anything else that she has said thus far in the movie. Even though it's only been a couple of minutes, it feels very different.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah. So her daughter's leaving for college, which I guess this is a fun thing to have a guest on who does have children.
Oh yeah.
So Nicole, I know your children are young, but what do you feel like you would be going through when your first kid moves out of the house and goes off?
Well, it's weird because I mean, my oldest Jack is going into 7th grade next year, and the awareness that I only have so many more summers with him home before he is going off into the world is already on my mind. So I think everyone in the movie seems to be so aware of how is Claire going to handle this? Is she going to fall apart? Is it going to be too much? But she seems to be handling it okay. When they drop her off, she only breaks down once as she's leaving. Only cries once, which I feel like is pretty acceptable.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's just a lot of emotions that she's probably experiencing because she's going to be so excited for her daughter. And if you haven't watched the movie, yes, this is her daughter, but it's not Norman's daughter.
Yes.
Which it seems like they're a unit, they are raising her because they've been together since she was little. But it's her daughter from a previous relationship. So it's really she's experiencing all of this in a way that's different from Norman. Because it's her daughter. She's going through a lot. I think it would just be very exciting and overwhelming and kind of nerve-wracking at the same time.
Yeah, and I think you do get that, like, they're such like this happy couple. They seem like a great unit, but she's a lot more upset about the daughter going off to college. Which
and in a way, it almost is like, okay, well, she's the mom. She's getting upset. She's more emotional about it because at this point, you really don't know that she is not their biological daughter until a little bit later in the movie.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, she goes, they both drop Caitlin off, the daughter, and it's very emotional, but she does all right.
Yes.
She does all right.
She keeps telling people, I have the house, so
yes.
I have the house to work in, and I have the garden to work on, because clearly she doesn't work outside of the house. So this is, what is she going to do to fill her time now is the sense she's on the verge of this change or this opportunity to really sort of discover herself or figure out what she wants out of life. So there's almost this optimism that she is open to new experiences at the same time, because she has this big change in her life happening with her daughter going away.
Yeah. And I think she talks about that. I think like at one point she mentions, she's nervous, but she's excited because she can do, other hobbies and stuff now. Like there's like a little bit of optimism there for her character.
Exactly.
Cue the new hobby she discovers of voyeurism.
Of snooping on your neighbors, everyone's favorite pastime.
Yep. Right out the gate, she found a new hobby.
Well, they give her a lot of material to work with too. They really do.
Yes,
they do.
God.
So
I mean, like, let's be honest. Like, we would all do the same thing.
Oh, I 100%.
100%.
At this point in the movie is when I discovered that the character of Claire is Brianna.
Yes, she is. I literally, you guys, listeners, if you don't know me that well, other than being wealthy and classy, she is me. I don't know. I can be classy.
Oh yes,
you're very
classy.
Very classy, Brianna.
Yeah.
So no, she is.
So
That's amazing.
She sort of like, she's kind of watching her new neighbors move in. She's kind of spying, and then she kind of like she's gotten back from taking her daughter to college. And she kind of half meets this mysterious neighbor that she's been spying on, like through the fence.
Yes.
And
so,
I think,
oh God, I was just going to say, so leading up to that, I mean, she is down in the basement after she's come back, and she's looking through this old scrapbook of stuff. And she gets so upset when she's looking at the scrapbook, like looking back through all these memories. Like she almost is like having this panic attack. She's having a difficult time breathing. She looks back at her cello in the basement. And I always wondered, and looking at it more this last time I watched it a few nights ago, is what happened that triggered that anxiety for her? That is it just looking back at her past life, but because that's what leads her to go outside and get this breath of fresh air, where she then runs into the neighbor who's also freaking out outside.
Well, because I think she finds the insurance claim photo of the car.
Yes.
She does look at the photo of a car wreck that she had
and
a year
so
ago.
I think the combination of looking at her past and then her cello and then the car accident, I think she's seeing everything that she's lost, and it's all coming in a lot.
And probably also, everyone asking her, "Are you okay? You're going through this big
gosh,
everything. Are you doing all right? Are you holding it together?"
It's just that's true. Too much.
Also, fun fact: the claim was on my birthday. the date that was on the photo for her.
Nice.
Car insurance.
That's like
claim.
Day and year.
No, it was. I think it was 98, and I'm 96. But
so it was on your 21. Second birthday.
Yes.
Nice. That's awesome.
Well, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into psych, but also it could be that was a trigger to kind of get to this repressed memory that she has. So that would kind of trigger that panic attack we see. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the psych later.
So she runs outside for this fresh breath of air, and this is where she sees the neighbor and kind of meets her, kind of doesn't. The neighbor is very like flighty and kind of like panicky and afraid and
She seems so distraught.
Yeah.
And afraid. And you very much get the impression that she's afraid of this relationship, something that is happening with her husband. Because then the neighbor completely is like, oh, I have to go, as soon as the neighbor's husband starts pulling into the driveway. You know, she runs away, has to go. So you very much get this impression that something is wrong in the neighbor's relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is when we get the first of many in this movie, just amazing, epic jump scares.
Oh my gosh.
When Mary.
Yeah, Mary.
Yes.
Mary Fewer, when we see her eye kind of pop through the fence.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Every time I know it's coming, but
it still gets me 20 times later.
It always makes me think of Brianna and her, like, not phobia, but like fear of seeing someone's eye up close.
I have a
that close.
thing with eyes. I have a thing with eyes.
It's just all of a sudden there's nothing. She's looking through this knot hole in the fence to try to see the neighbor, and all of a sudden her full eyeball is just right there in front of you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I also got anxiety when she first started looking through the hole. It's like, no, like don't get so
like
close.
stop
you
what you're
happening.
doing.
She's balancing on this rock in her garden that has like almost like a lip, like a edge to it, and she's standing on that. So you're almost geared up to think, oh, she's gonna fall or twist her ankle or something, and then there's
Birkenstocks. That's not gonna
giant
hold up.
eyeball.
Right.
And she does slip and she nicks her wrist a little.
Yeah.
So that's when she goes to go inside and she's, holding her wrist and she reaches for the door and the door just unlatches and opens on its own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which happens multiple times from then on out.
Yes, but this is the first of the times. Yeah.
And then I think the next notable event that happens in the movie is that we meet her friend.
Yes, Jody.
Oh, Jody. I was gonna say I was gonna call her Lori or something. I'm just a
Jody.
jerk. I couldn't. Yeah. So
who I love.
We meet Jody, who I love so much.
She is such a fun, like, loose, mystical, hippie kind of energy to her.
And so supportive.
Yes.
Like she just instantly supports Claire, who tells her that she thinks her house is haunted.
She sees Claire. She doesn't question her. She wants to be supportive and really she listens to Claire, unlike Norman, her husband, who just kind of assumes certain things are the way they are.
So we meet Jody. She's fantastic.
And then Claire does more spying on the neighbors.
Yes.
So she makes this welcome basket, which I think she would have done anyway.
Yeah.
But she
kind of solid strategy.
Right. She uses it in it.
I mean, I have to say, I do make welcome baskets for all of my new neighbors.
This is why you are Claire.
That's hilarious. I can tell you any of my neighbors' names.
I know literally every single one of my neighbors, and I'm friends with half of them.
I know each and every neighbor's pet name.
Yes.
But I don't know the humans at all.
I know the kids' names. I don't necessarily know the adult names that go with the kids in the neighborhood. Yeah.
No.
So in this welcome basket is a bottle of wine, which brings us to a good point. I think that we should talk about what we're sipping on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because we have a guest star tonight, we thought we would have Nicole choose our drink. And she chose a great one. So Nicole, what are we sipping on?
So we are sipping on the Lake House cocktail, which is a combination of gin or vodka, lemon juice, little bit of simple syrup, and Prosecco with a garnish of lemon, twist, and mint. I did mine with a Empress gin, which is, it has a elderberry butterfly flower in it. It has a little violet flavor to it, but it's quite delightful, actually. It's nice and refreshing, something I think you would probably sip on if you were a bougie lady sitting at your lake house.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's perfect.
I am channeling right now. So, full disclosure, the last couple episodes, I haven't had the ingredients or been too lazy or too busy. But this time I did make the cocktail. This is delicious.
Mm-hmm.
It is so good. The only thing I don't have is a mint leaf. I don't have that, but I don't think that's
fine.
essential.
It's not
to
that
it.
important.
No.
It's really, really good.
But I could almost see a little mint like muddled in the bottom of it might elevate it just a little bit more. But even without the mint garnish, I think it is very light and summery, even though the movie doesn't take place in summer. But
it starts in the summer though, right?
It does.
Starts when it's nice and warm.
Summer.
This is the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
Drink.
Yeah.
And I'm having the mocktail version, which we'll post as well. And it's delightful.
Yeah. No, this is a good summer drink.
So good.
Oh, except just make sure to stir if you use the simple syrup, because I made mine. I didn't stir. I took a sip and I was like, wow, this tastes like overly sweetened lemonade. But you just got to stir it a little bit.
I also had thought about, so the recipe just says to pour everything over ice. I had also thought about shaking the gin, simple syrup, and lemon juice like in a shaker, then pouring over ice before adding the Prosecco. Yeah. So if I have this again, I would probably try that to see if it just helps mix that simple syrup in a little bit more thoroughly, but it's very good.
Yeah, I very much enjoy.
Okay, so Claire has her cute little welcome basket and she takes it over to the neighbors, but no one answers. So she kind of peeks around the porch, does a little snooping, and she finds a shoe with a blood drop on it. And then she comes back to the front, and
just one shoe too. Just one.
Yeah, just one.
One shoe.
So she comes back to the front, and of course, then the husband opens the door. Another little mini jump scare. She asks if his wife is home. He says no, she's not. So she gives him the welcome basket. And then, of course, later we see him take the welcome basket out on the porch, and he just takes the bottle of wine and dumps the rest of the basket out.
So I love his character.
I know.
He plays it perfectly.
That she put in there, probably from her own like garden club roses that she's cultivated, flowers. And he just tosses it aside.
Yep. So rude.
Yeah. No, I love when she right at the end of that scene where they first meet, she asks, I think it's like, oh, is your wife here? He says no, like, and then she asks, when will she be back or something? He's like, I have to go. Like, just
very avoidant.
I'm not talking to you anymore.
Well, because then you find out later too, I think it's later that, so she basically asks Norman, her husband, about the new neighbors, and apparently the husband works at the university where Norman does, and he works in the psychology department, and I think, is that just, no offense, Laura, like, is this just how psychologists like act when they're meeting new people? Like, he's so like, I have no idea. I have no care. Like, I just don't want to listen to you. I don't want to interact with you because I don't know you. He's very
dismissive.
Yeah. Oh, yes, no offense taken, because they also have a line in the movie where I think Claire is talking to Norman about how he's in the psych department, and then one of them says like, "Oh, they're all nuts," and that's absolutely, I can say from experience, true. All psychologists that I know have a little bit of something going on.
A little something. But I also think when you look back, though, it's almost like when you realize what's going on, which is just that they got in a fight and she went to, I think, her parents' house, when you think back on it, it's like, oh, like, of course he doesn't want to share that, like, oh, we got in a massive fight and she's with her parents. Like, I'm not going to get into
because she's thinking of leaving me.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to convince her to come back to me.
To someone that you've never met before and that you live next to.
Yeah. Who's also been spying on you and is seeming a little like overly invested in your life. Like it really, when you look back on it, it's very fair.
Yeah.
So then there's some events that happen that, are fine. Like they're not hugely important to the storyline. They go to dinner and she runs into an old friend from college. And that's when Norman kind of makes her confess that she thinks the house is haunted.
That's
and
so mean.
It's very like, it just feels
manipulative.
icky. Yeah. Just a gross moment.
Definitely like belittling, like as a joke. Yeah.
For a moment, it's almost like he believes her. So yes, at this point, she is starting to think there's something wrong in the house because the door keeps opening. She's seen this ghost figure in the bathroom. In the bathtub by this point. And they go to dinner and it seems like, oh, well, Claire thinks there's a goat. The house is haunted. And maybe he believes her. Yeah. But then he's like, oh, it's just my old man, which he has his own daddy issues.
Yes, he does.
Oh,
very much. It seems like he can never live up to his dad. He was also at the same university. That's a whole thing that comes into play. But
but I will say, women supporting women, her friend immediately believes her. She's like, oh, I totally believe in that stuff. Like, maybe it is something.
Yeah. So, one of the things that happens when she does confront the man is one of my favorite lines in the movie, where she, like, when she confronts him, she goes up to him and she's like, I know you killed her, you murdering son of a bitch.
Yes. And then the wife walks up.
And then the wife walks up. It's so embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing.
I know.
So bad.
So yeah, at this point, like, she realizes Mary isn't dead and she's just now been humiliated. And so I think the next scene we see is she's in a therapist's office. Right?
Yeah, I think it cuts right to that.
Yeah, so it does cut to that, but I think, so we were talking about like the friend is supporting her. But so I think we need to backtrack a little bit. Jody is supporting her because we've seen all of this haunting, like the picture frame falls down. I think I can't remember when the computer turns on. But Jody and Claire have a seance before she finds out that
that's right,
Mary Fewer is not dead.
Yes, that's right.
Isn't this? So she's seen the psychologist because the therapist tells her
to have a seance,
to try and contact the spirit.
Yes, that's right.
That's right. Like, is he just trying to, in a way, is he telling her to contact, like, face her demons? I'm like, oh, is this therapist just trying to tell her to really address the issues that she's facing? Right. Or does he actually believe there might be a haunting?
I
don't know. I feel like it could go either way.
We have seen so many horror movies where I feel that I just absolutely despise the therapist, the psychologist.
They're usually the bad guy.
They're usually terrible. This guy I liked.
I know.
I myself have never used fireballs to like kind of get your client to talk a bit more. That's intriguing. I'm interested in that. But I thought he was very like, just believed her and supportive, just like her friend, who then they go to have the seance. And I forget if I think it's maybe right before they have the seance that Claire's friend Jody gives her a gift after she has confessed.
Oh no, I think that was the other friend, right? Because there's Jody and then there's also the friend at dinner.
Yeah, we were talking about the friend at dinner. So then there's Jody, and Jody does give her a gift.
Okay, so I was getting them mixed up, but Jody is the friend that then ends up having the seance with Claire.
Yes.
But before they find out, that Mary's not dead. But ladies, I have a surprise for you.
Oh, I hate your surprises.
The gift that Jody gives Claire is a book. And the book is called, I believe it's called Witchcraft something in Alchemy. Oh, what's it called? I wrote it down. It's called Witchcraft, Ghosts, and Alchemy. Which I think maybe they just didn't have the like the copyright or the license to say the actual name of the book.
Oh my god!
Magic and alchemy.
Oh my god!
So Spooky Sippers, you can't see it, but we will take pictures of it and post it to our blog. This is the book, and you can tell because the pictures that are in the book are the exact pictures that you see in the show.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Tell you, this is the stinkiest book that I have ever
it's because it's full of hauntings.
Well, so I was like, so my husband Jaden comes home and he's like, what is that smell? And I was like, Jaden, I got this book. It's really old, but I don't know how old because there's no copyright date.
Because it's full of ghosts.
Wait, seriously?
It's
No,
been around for eternity.
Publisher info or anything?
Because it's from Satan's time.
So it's written by Griot de Givry.
I know him.
Yeah,
personal friend of the pod.
There's no date on it, and Jane was like, "It smells like almost like metallic or something."
Bodies.
Yes. Well, I think it smells like the blood of my enemies. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Solid.
Where did you get this book?
Well, I ordered it on Amazon and I paid extra to get this original copy. Like, look at how creepy.
Of course, that's where you got it.
I feel like you're just inviting the spirits into your home now.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I would get some sage or something.
There
just in
is,
case.
Maybe put like some protective salt around the book.
Yeah,
just to keep
storage
the contained in there.
Mm-hmm. There are spells in here. It is so creepy. Like I'm so excited to take pictures of this and we can post it for our fans because I am terrified of this book, but also so intrigued. But yeah, there are spells in here that we could do. I'm not going to try to say them because
no, I totally will.
My Latin
is
horrendous.
Oh,
we'll have a seance.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Nicole, next time both you and Yvette are in town, so you guys both have to get here at the same time. We're going to have
we'll figure it out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Done.
Okay, so we can get back to the movie.
Okay, so they did, Jody and Claire did the seance.
Where Claire says commune.
I feel, but if you're doing a seance, you don't want to say communicate. You absolutely want to say commune with the spirit.
No, you have to use the right
language. It seriously. Yeah.
But there really is like something there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now it ends up that the dog comes through the room, but
damn it, Cooper.
Before Cooper, there was something going on.
The candle.
Yes.
Yeah, the candle blew out.
Mm-hmm. Even the indicator on the Ouija board, it moves on its own. Yes. I mean, there's something happening.
Mm-hmm. And so I think it's right after that because a lot of it happens in the bathroom, with water
the
and there's
with
so
the water.
Many mirrors and reflections in this movie, which I think is kind of like trying to be meta about
very intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because all of the main women in this movie, so Mary Fior, Claire, and who will later learn MEF, they all kind of look the same. They're all like reflections of each other a little bit. But at one point in the mirror, Claire takes a shower and or at some point she says, like, what do you want? She maybe sees a ghost in the bathroom.
Yes.
And she says,
it was right after Jody left.
Yes. Because she walks upstairs and the bathtub is filling up and it's all steamy. The mirror is all foggy.
Yeah. It's a little bit like The Ring, like when they go up and there's the water coming out and all that.
Yes.
And she says, like, what do you want? And then the lines of steam end up spelling out,
That was so cool. That was such a cool effect.
I really liked that.
Really well.
Because what we learn later is that she does know. She just isn't accessing those memories.
Yeah. She's repressed it all. And at first you think, because you kind of over the course of the movie have learned she had an accident a year ago. So part of the reason why people are concerned about her with her daughter going off to college is they've had this big move to the new house they've been working on, which was her father-in-law's. And then she had this terrible accident where her car basically wrapped around a tree. They weren't sure she was going to make it. That happened a year ago. Now her daughter is going off to college. So she's had a lot over the last, 12 to 18 months.
And I think we also learned that her accident had happened right after the DuPont chair party where her husband got this award.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we learned that happened. And then we also learned there's part of the haunting the old school computer that she has, which like with the internet and like
so amazing.
The white computer that's like super thick, like was amazing.
Yes.
I could almost hear like the AOL dial-up noises.
Yeah.
Even though they are not in the movie, I could hear them as I looked at that computer.
For sure.
But so she's playing some card game. It's not solitaire. It's not freestyle. I don't know.
It looks like solitaire.
I thought it was solitaire.
It's lighter solitaire. It's a version of solitaire, but it has different rules.
Yeah, it's totally spider solitaire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's spider solitaire.
Because I even was trying to figure out what game. So someone wins, and it's M, and like it says, like put your initials of the winner. It's MEF.
MEF. MEF. MEF.
Yes.
And she learns that her neighbor's full name is Mary Elizabeth Fjord.
Yes. So she's like, she's dead. That's it. I figured it out.
And there is another scene before this where she's walking upstairs after the door has opened for her, where through an angle, you see that the computer turns on as she's going upstairs and the bathroom is flooded. So you're kind of primed that there's something going on with the computer or the bathroom beforehand, before she even, the MEF shows up on the solitaire.
Yeah.
So then we get to the scene at the train station where she is just all amped up and she sees the husband, her neighbor, the husband. Mm-hmm. So she goes and accuses him of killing his wife, and then the wife comes and walks up next to him. So I feel like this is kind of where the movie then breaks into another act, because we've been thinking the ghost is this neighbor, Mary, and we now discover it's not. So it's like, well, shit, who's this ghost?
The whole thing was a red herring.
Or you're thinking, has this really been all in her head? She's going, like, yes, you see this, but is the stuff that she's experiencing really happening to her? Or is she perceiving it to happen in a way, but there's no ghost, there's no, you know, was it all kind of in her head to this point?
Yeah. And I guess in the original script, when they did the seance, they were originally going to have, I think, something happen while they were doing the seance that was going to like freak Jodie out and have her run away. But they cut it out because they wanted to keep it a mystery, whether or not, Claire was losing her mind and starting to see things versus having someone else experience it and confirm what she was experiencing. So they ended up cutting that out to keep it intentionally vague, which I think that was a good idea.
I think that's a good call.
Because it makes us question what's happening.
The suspense is built, but then the dog comes in and you're like, oh, it's just Cooper. Like, it's just this big, beautiful dog, you know,
he's so cute.
Who has had some things like he's randomly barking. Claire at one point goes down to the lake onto their dock and is throwing the ball for him to go get it in the water. He refuses to go into the water, is like growling at the end of the dock close to the shore. So even, I think, you know, you're kind of cued to think, oh, is there something going on? Even the dog is spooked. Like, the dog is the spirit.
I have said it before. I will say it again. Always trust the animals, especially the dogs.
They always know.
Yep.
They
always know.
Yep. Yes.
So now that Claire knows for sure that it's not the neighbor, one of the hauntings that, like, the weird little episodes that happens is the picture frame falls down of the DuPont chair party.
Times.
And when it falls down, I think on the underside of, like, it's like a framed picture of, you know, her husband getting the DuPont chair award, and
it's a newspaper clipping.
So behind it, because it's a newspaper clipping, it's got this article of this missing woman. And then she does like the most high-tech internet search that you could do in 2000.
Because she sees that her name
is Madison
Elizabeth.
That's all she knows.
That's how she searches for her.
Yes.
And then it ends up.
And she goes to, you know, like, they're living in Vermont. So the missing persons, while it is, you know, a decent amount, it is not that many because Vermont is such a small state. So she's able to quickly scroll through.
Quick scan.
Like, the list of people to find Madison Elizabeth.
And her last name is Frank.
Yes.
So she is found MEF again.
And like when the computer, again, this high-tech computer.
Oh my gosh,
image of the woman.
Like the slow
pixelated thing. At first, it kind of, again,
looks like
Claire.
Yes.
But then it starts to be like, you can tell like she's a younger woman, but yeah, she's blonde. She's got that like, classic white woman look.
Yeah.
So she discovers that this Madison Elizabeth Frank, this young college girl, goes missing.
And the college that her husband teaches at.
Yes.
Yep.
So local.
Yes. And then Claire goes to visit Madison's mom, which was so sad. Her mom was so
sad. Yeah.
Just sitting there with her cat and her like soap opera without the volume on. Just frozen in time is what it felt like. She couldn't do anything other than sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she ends up going into Madison's room. And I was taken aback by all of the pictures that Madison had of herself in her room.
I mean, she was ahead of her time because it's like modern day
the age of the selfie she was aware of before it happened.
She was just advanced.
I have a lot of pictures of myself with other people, so I guess I'm not completely innocent of this, but it was just glamour shots of herself just posted all over.
It was a lot of herself. Do you think her mom put it there?
She could have.
Because the one photo is like, oh, this is the one that they use in all of the newspaper clippings and stuff like that, where she's like, oh, like this is the best one.
Yeah.
So
I don't know though. I almost get the feeling that while I sympathize with like Madison and what we end up finding out she goes through, it seems like she kind of, the mom even says, I was amazed at the grades that she got given with how much she partied. So I kind of got this sense of her of being very self-confident, very aware that she was an attractive young female.
Yeah.
And I think she may have used that to, we later find out in some of her relationships to kind of to her advantage. I think
it girl is what
it wouldn't be surprising that she had a lot of photos of herself.
No, it tracks.
I mean, I guess that's understandable. The part that really disturbed me was the braid of hair that was hanging with
why would you keep a braid of your own hair in your room?
So, as a parent, I mean, you're supposed to kind of like, keep your kid's first lock of hair. I don't know. It's weird. I mean,
a thing?
Yeah.
It is. It is. They get their first haircut and you're supposed to like keep a lock of their hair. Now, I have one somewhere in my house from each of the kids when they got their first haircut, but I didn't braid it and put it on display with a pretty pink bow.
So it's a little odd.
It's a little odd.
My husband, when
then Claire takes it.
Yeah. When we first moved in together, Jaden had like this box of like all this like old stuff. And like it was things like, I don't know, Magic the Gathering cards. And do you remember those little gum chains that you used to make? It was like paper chains that you made with old gum wrappers.
Oh yeah.
Starburst wrappers. He had those. And one of the things he had was, and he didn't warn me ahead of time, he had like his wisdom teeth just in a bag.
What the hell?
Like whole wisdom teeth.
Wisdom teeth are giant.
They're giant.
That's disturbing.
Keeping like discarded parts of your body to me is just a little bit weird.
It's a little odd. Yeah.
I mean, I have a box of toenails under my bed, but
I mean, who doesn't have a box of toenails?
Yeah, that's normal.
I have a box of my dog's toenails under my bed.
That's normal. Yeah.
That's not something Claire would do, I have to say, Brianna.
Well.
So Claire takes the braid.
The hair.
Yeah.
And then kind of the next scene of importance is that Claire is wearing a red dress, which we have talked about the significance of red in the past, sippers. And it's also important to notice that Claire for the movie has bluish eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then her eyes turn to very clearly they're green.
Green.
Yes.
Yes.
And
which are the color of Madison's eyes.
And we see that she's holding the braid in her hand.
Yes. Holding the braid.
Yes.
So Norman comes home and Claire is feeling a little sexy.
It's like sexy but aggressive.
Aggressively sexy.
Aggressive sexy.
Norman seems taken aback. So they had a fight and you know, he basically comes in and says, "Oh, I guess we're not fighting anymore. You're not mad at me." Yeah. And the way that she says, "I wouldn't go that far." You're like, "Oh,
okay."
Yeah.
Well, and
you
she
are
mad.
Yeah.
She gets this apple from the fridge, which I get, like, anyone that eats a red apple, those aren't good. They don't.
Oh, Red Delicious. You don't eat Red Delicious
apple. They're terrible. Granny Smith, Fuji, whatever you got at Gala, whatever you got to do, but Red Delicious apples are disgusting.
It's true.
But they're pretty. So she gets a Red Delicious apple and she goes to feed it to him. And
as forbidden fruit.
Yeah, forbidden fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And she feeds it to him. She shoves it up into his teeth.
Yeah, feed is a loose term for what she did.
I think assault might be a better.
Yes.
And he's
that would chip a tooth.
I'm surprised there was no blood with that because he really was aggressive.
And so then he says something like, "That's too rough." And it just made me think of when, Brianna, sometimes you and I are just, I don't know, goofing around and you go to
I like to beat on my sister, okay?
I'm like, that's too hard.
I like to attack Laura, not Nicole, because Nicole is the alpha dog, but there's just something meek about Laura that I like to prey on.
It's too rough.
I like to phrase it as I'm a delicate fucking flower.
Oh, sorry. Delicate.
Like I'm delicate with a little bit of spice.
Yeah.
Anyway. Right, moving on.
So we have this scene where where Claire is possessed, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like she's possessed. She's holding the lock.
And she's used this book that Jody gave her.
Yes.
That Laura now has in her possession.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
We'll find what she did. We'll find what she used.
Yes.
I tried to find it, but there's not a really clear index. It's very mysterious.
And we don't get dates. I don't know why they give us an index.
Right.
But then we get it's a flashback from Madison's perspective.
Yes.
Which is wild that they went
Claire is aware of it.
Yeah, so it's Claire is having a flashback. It's
as
Madison. Madison is showing Claire, basically. I think is what they were going for. Where she turns and looks at one of the mirrors in the hallway and Claire sees herself walking into the house in the rain, seeing Harrison Ford's what's his name again? Norman. Yeah. Seeing Norman with Madison, which is
on the desk. Yeah.
What a wild way to do that.
I loved
to reveal what happened. Because the whole thing was she knew the whole time. She had just kind of, it had been like a repressed memory, forgotten something. So that was so cool.
And it's it's when my, another one of my favorite lines in the movie happens, because you get Claire puts on, Michelle Pfeiffer does a little bit of a change of accent. It's very subtle. Yeah. It's hard to pick up on.
It's almost
almost slightly Southern.
Southern, yes.
Yeah. And she goes, she's beginning to suspect something.
Yes.
Yeah, I think your wife's starting to suspect something.
Yeah. And then Norman's like, she goes, I think she's beginning to suspect something. And Norman's like, who? And she goes, your wife.
Mm-hmm. And in that moment, she looks, it's like
Madison.
Now she is transformed into Madison.
Yep.
She stops being Claire. And so then Norman freaks out because I think he's like, what the frick is going on? Pushes Claire off. And that's when Claire drops the braid of Madison's hair and kind of becomes unpossessed.
Well, and then she says, I know, kind of like the eerie mirror where it said, she's like, I know.
Yeah, because it all comes back to her.
Mm-hmm. And then Norman says the worst line in the movie. He was like, God help me, I slipped.
Oh my God, I know.
What, you slipped into her vagina?
Right.
No, you did not slip.
Right. Did not make one mistake. That's not how it works. Yeah.
So Norman tells her, I had an affair. I slipped. Then Claire goes to Jody's house to stay the night because she's mad.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
So Claire goes to stay at Jody's. And this is something funny about that I remember, like, because I was younger watching this. Claire said something about, Jody said something about kind of confessing to Claire that she knew about the affair.
Right.
Yeah, I saw Norman, he was with this woman and they touched in such a way that I didn't go say hello. And she says something about I saw them inanimate.
Yes.
As a kid, because it kind of sounds like inanimate, like an inanimate object or something. And I was like, what is inanimate? What is inanimate? I thought that was a description. I thought that was an adjective. I did not think that was a place. When I first watched this movie, I was like, oh, they were inanimate.
No, but I feel like from Claire's reaction, she also asks about it. What do you mean?
Yes.
And then that's when she clarifies, oh, it's this small town nearby. So no, I had the same reaction where it's oh, what does that mean to be inanimate with someone?
Yes, exactly. So basically you then find out that her friend Jody found out about this affair because she saw Norman and Madison. Then she was going to tell Claire about it, but then Claire has this accident.
Yep.
That she wraps herself around a tree in her car going 80 miles an hour. And Norman was so distraught at the thought of losing Claire that she couldn't, say anything, do anything. And then Claire doesn't remember after waking up from this accident. So sort of lets things go. And it seems like Jody is like, well, Norman's ending it. He's not going, he's so upset about losing Claire. He's not going to continue with this affair. We're not going to say anything. I will, save my friend.
Yeah.
This hurt by not bringing it back up again.
Yeah. Which as a friend, that would be tough, because it's on the one hand, it's well, of course, tell them. But then she has this horrible car accident where it's oh, hey, I know you almost died, but I have some bad news.
By the way, your husband's a cheating liar.
Right. Exactly. Right. It's there's never a great time. So then Claire goes home the next day.
Yes, because she has to ask him something.
Oh, yeah. And that's when Norman we see as the audience, Norman has fallen in the bathtub. The blow dryer is in there with him. The water's on. He's passed out. So, next thing we know, an ambulance is there and his doctor friend came back.
The doctor friend who they met at dinner.
Yes.
Which I thought was convenient. So the friend that they met at dinner who was brought the girl who was a long lost friend of Claire, they're there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I feel again, this is a way that the movie did such this kind of multi-layered approach of things, because I think they did a good job of showing that, especially to Claire, Norman looked like, I think he faked a suicide. She thought he had attempted suicide, but to other people it looked like an accident. So it's this multi-layer of what actually happened.
So it's the audience thinks he's faked it. Claire thinks he's actually
or that Madison did it,
or
right?
That Madison did it.
Yeah,
so
that was not.
There was 4 different ways of what this happened.
Yep.
Of this, this accident, which we then realize he never was in danger. He faked it all. But it was.
This is when he confesses, because Claire is what happened to her.
Yeah. Did you have something to do with her disappearance?
Yeah, and he claims that she killed herself in their house.
Yep.
He came back and found her, and he put her in the lake. And that's when Claire says this girl must be brought up.
No, I think that's
also
later.
Is another time where
the
way that she says it is so, I don't know. It's
you're right. Okay, because in the missing persons picture, Madison has this necklace on, and it's got this symbol. This rose symbol.
And because in this part, there is almost a weird almost resolution of maybe things are still going to be okay and they're still going to work. Like there's like this little part of it where it looks like maybe they're going to be okay. So
yeah,
they, he has this accident, the ambulance leaves, things are still weird between them. And then she says,
right.
okay, I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is when
like, I'm tired. I didn't sleep.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to bed.
So that's when he starts looking into, what could be happening. He takes the book.
Yeah.
And starts reading about exorcism by fire.
I'll let you guys know.
It is like, in this part, you're almost like, oh, he believes her?
Yes.
Or at the very least, he's starting to question, could it be Madison and am I in trouble? You know?
Right.
It's like a 2-bird, 1 stone. I need to figure this out. I also liked, did you guys see that when he called the other professor, he was at Duke University? We've talked about this before. Duke was one of the only universities that had a paranormal department. Yeah. So I loved that he called Duke, like Duke University, to try to get an answer to it. And that's when then we see Claire, right, go out to
so while
we see her in the background going out to the dock.
Yes.
And then she's standing at the end and she's just like a statue. Yeah. And then all of a sudden she just plunges in the lake.
It looks like almost she's cold.
Yeah.
It is like
the
she's
braid.
Cold. So she's at the end and it's not quite like she's jumped. Like, and especially I think given that I've watched it so many times, you can kind of, which is why it's so good to watch it again. Because then you can look for these, like how does it really happen this time? What does it look like? More of the details. But it is almost like the hand that's holding the braid, she is plunged. It's like she's yanked into the water.
Yanking her.
And just torpedoes down to this designated spot in the lake.
Yes, because she's trying to show her something.
Yep.
And then Norman comes out.
Yeah, and then it's like they got to burn the braid.
Yes.
But we also see at the bottom of the lake, we see a box with the same symbol as Madison's necklace.
Which I think is a pretty little heart, design. I would wear that.
Yeah. But then you're right. Norman rescues her out of the lake, and he's like, "We got to burn the braid."
So then, it's this like resolution. They burn the braid. It seems like things are better.
Yeah.
Claire all of a sudden is dressed like Steve Jobs, or what's the girl that tried to be like Steve Jobs?
What is her name?
With the blood testing.
Elizabeth Holmes. Yeah, Elizabeth Holmes.
She's dressed like Steve Jobs, Elizabeth Holmes, playing the cello. She's back to herself.
Yeah.
And then we see her taking a bath, which I have a question for all of my co-hosts today. Could you take a bath in a ghost tub? Like you have seen an actual ghost in this tub multiple times. Could you take a bath in that tub?
Yes.
Now, she does say when she's playing the cello that she believes Madison is gone. And Norman asks her and he says, how do you know? And she says, I can feel her. So they burn the braid. She probably thinks, oh, spirit is gone. Let me go take a bath.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know if I would take a bath in a ghost tub.
Yeah. I think at this point you'd feel like cleansed and like relieved, right? You think the ghost is gone? Like, go take a bath.
If you genuinely think it's gone, maybe. Okay. All right.
Because I think she really does believe we've resolved it. Norman didn't do anything. She killed herself. He just got rid of the body to protect us.
Yeah.
And now we've burned the braid. We know what happened. We're good.
Right.
But you also then see her wearing the locket. So she takes this bath. She thinks she's like everything's fine, but she's wearing the locket.
Yeah.
Well, she doesn't have the locket yet.
Not yet. Yeah. Her bathrobe falls.
Yes.
Oh,
and
she
finds the key that was hidden when the picture dropped with the DuPont chair and the article of her missing.
That's right.
And it falls into like a vent and she finds the key. So she finds this key and she uses that then to go back to the lake where she had tried to get the box. She finds this box in the lake buried under the mud, and that's when she gets the necklace.
That's right. And then she's wearing the necklace.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she opens the box, right, and it's downstairs in the basement, and that's when Norman comes down as well.
Yes, little jump scare.
That's when she says, this girl must be brought up.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Because he does his full confession and, you know, I put her in her car and I pushed her down the boat ramp. Like full confession of what happened, you know, quote unquote. He gives like parts of the truth, you know, saying what happened. And that's when she's like, oh, she has to be brought
up. But he's
up.
still claiming that she killed herself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it.
Right.
I just feel like in that moment, to me, I'm like, this dude is a terrible liar. Like, this is such a bad, or like she says, you know, you've got to call the police. And, you know, the way he says, yes, this is Norman. I'm at this address and I
have information on her disappearance.
Right.
Yep.
And it's he's such a bad liar.
Yeah.
So she goes upstairs to like dry off and change because she just got out of the lake. And that's where then Norman comes up behind her, right?
Yeah, because she checks the phone and realizes that he dialed 411 instead of 911 when he made the call.
Yes.
And so as she sees this and makes that realization, he comes up. Oh, we should say she stopped by his office one time and saw earlier in the movie, stopped by his office and saw what they were working on. And they were working on this, you know, halothane, this chemical that, you know, when applied to a cloth and put over the mice's little mouth makes them go paralyzed. And like, they're all still
conscious.
They're conscious, but they can't move. So then go back to the scene. Claire's holding the phone and Norman comes up behind her with a cloth with the same color. So we know what it is. Covers her mouth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is just such an epic scene because he puts her in the bath.
Good.
And we know that she's fully aware. And he just starts, he puts the plug in the drain.
She's downstairs, right?
Oh,
with
yes.
The floor?
Yeah. That's where he.
No, that's.
Because then doesn't he carry her up to the bathroom?
Yes. Yeah, she is downstairs on the floor.
So they're somehow downstairs and she's on the floor. And this was one of the scenes that cinematically is phenomenal.
Yes.
He is standing above her. She is laying flat on the floor. And we can see from our perspective that she has on Madison's necklace.
Yes.
But it's kind of intertwined in her hair. And they do this crazy camera angle where you're watching it like you're looking on at them down the hallway. But then they flip the camera like it almost is like under the floor. And you're seeing her lay completely flat on the glass, like, or on the floor.
Right.
And you see everything from underneath.
Yeah. Which again, just with all of the mirror, when you know to look for all the mirrors in the movie, all of the mirrors and the glass and stuff, I feel like would make filming this movie super hard.
Yeah.
Like to not get any cameras or like reflections of them in the movie. But it was so cool.
Yeah.
So amazing how they did it. It just brought this whole other eerie component to it. Like, everything is being turned on its head at this point. Claire thinks she knows what's going on, but now all of a sudden her husband has drugged her, probably killed a woman, and everything you're seeing it from a different angle.
Yeah. And when I was listening to the director's commentary on it, it was basically at this point, because for that shot that Nicole, you were talking about, they did create a glass floor in order for the camera to be underneath the floor and show that scene. It was basically from here through the end of the movie, they were basically doing crazy stuff with the camera. And it is like, once you watch it for the second time, you see like how much weird stuff, like they have the camera, like when they're going into the bathroom, it goes like around the shower and like goes to a different angle. Like they had to build, I guess, 5 different versions of this bathroom in order to get all of the angles that they had planned for it. So it was like the whole ending, they just went crazy with the way that they shot it, which I don't know. I feel like it was really cool though. Like, I didn't catch everything like in watching the director's cut. It's like, oh, I didn't really realize that looked odd. But I think when you see it all together, it was worth it because you just get some crazy angles.
Well, then I think as you watch it repeatedly, you are able to kind of take what happens, but then look at it slightly different, which is probably why I love watching it over and over again, because you can kind of add another layer to, okay, well, what is the cinematography in this moment?
Yes.
Or what is the meaning behind this angle they're doing? Because you know enough of the story to then see the other meanings behind it.
For sure. Well, and I think especially because this was before drones and stuff, so that would have been freaking hard to do in 2000.
Yes. You have to create like rigs. I don't even know how they did it.
Yeah.
So he takes her back upstairs and puts her in the bathtub, and we have that amazing scene, which honestly, listeners, if you have not seen the movie, watch it just for the ending because it's so good. So yeah, we've got the scene in the bathtub.
It's my biggest scare.
My one, I don't know, little thing that like irritates me about this scene is she is a very upper class woman. I feel like she would have had a pedicure.
You know, I've thought that in watching this.
You know, just
her toes looked a little whack.
Don't look amazing when she's in the water. Like just paint those toes.
I thought that. Yeah, they looked a little whack.
Yeah, just a little outgrown. Yeah. But other than that, the scene is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So basically, Norman is going to stage her suicide. So, you know, he's doing that. But as he's doing it, he slips and falls and he hits his head on the edge of the bathtub and passes out.
And there's blood everywhere, like on the side.
So the water is still running in the tub. And he's passed out on the ground.
And before he does that, as he's like, you know, plugging the tub, staging her suicide as she's paralyzed, watching the water fill up, which is going to drown her, he confesses to like what it felt like to drown Madison, to hold her under the water. And he confesses that he faked his own fake suicide, accident, attempt, whatever. So like you now know. That's the thing in horror movies. If the killer ever lets you see their face or know their true story, you're dead. Because they will only do that if they know there is no way you can ever then out them.
Yep.
And at this point, she's still completely paralyzed physically.
We should say
seeing everything. You know, her toes are starting to move a tiny bit, which he does notice, but she's completely immobile. She's unable to do anything other than watch all of this happen and watch the water rise in the tub.
Yeah. We should say the reason that he falls is because he finally notices the locket. So he goes to take the locket off. So he like grabs her and lifts her up to take the locket off. And as he's trying to do that, all of a sudden her face morphs into like dead Madison.
Decomposed
body of Madison. And it scares him so badly that he like falls back. And that's why
I have to say, I think that, you know, sometimes people can like use and abuse the jump scares, right? Like, it's like, it's overdone. They don't need to do it as often. I think this movie, more than any other movie I've ever seen, does them so well. Like they're done. They're done
very intentionally.
Intentionally. Like to get you into the minds of the characters, to really spook you, because you care so much about what's going on that you get so invested, and then all of a sudden, boom, like something happens, just like freak you out. Like it's the jump scares in this movie are so good.
They are,
and they make me jump.
Yes,
20 plus times I've seen it. It doesn't matter how many times. I will still jump every time, and that's I think why it is so well done, because it does get you every time.
Ultimately,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, ultimately, Claire is able to save herself. She's able to stop, turn off the water, and get the stopper out of it and drain the tub. And so she's able to, you know, then regain full mobility and whatnot. And so she looks to go get out of the tub. She looks over the edge, and Norman is gone, and there's just kind of a trail of blood. She grabs so she grabs a shard of glass from the broken mirror that's pretty serious, and goes in search of Norman / trying to escape the house.
Yep. Yeah.
And then he's now on the ground where she previously was.
Yes.
but she's trying to call 911, but the cordless phone is in his pocket.
Yeah.
Right. Now, we should explain for our younger fans. So there used to be this thing called a landline phone where if there was multiple phones in the home, even if they were cordless, but they all were connected to the same kind of route.
Yeah.
Route out. So if one person
apparently to my son and his friends, only people born in the 1900s, that's right, the 1900s have or know what a landline is.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're on this landline phone, you're born in the 1900s, you're on this landline phone, if one person is on the phone, it ties up the phone connection. I won't say phone, people will get that. The connection to the outside world, so that then the other person cannot pick up their phone and do it because the connection is busy.
Yep. You only get one call.
One call at a time, friends.
So he has like tied up the phone line so she cannot call out. She cannot call.
So she grabs
this cordless phone to end that call and make a new one.
Yeah. But instead she just grabs the cell phone and the car keys.
Yes.
And runs out of the house. But of course, she's not able to get in the car, so she has to get in their truck.
It's the wrong car keys.
The boat.
Which has the boat attached. Yeah. And as she's leaving, she sees the door open and the rocker on their front porch area rocking.
Yep.
Like, has he moved? Has he gotten out? Is he coming after her?
Yep. And then like the boat cover flaps.
Yes.
So we had
go ahead.
We had seen some, we had seen again, kind of another allusion to this when Norman and Claire were going out like on a date to meet the one friends, where Norman was going to call them to let them know, hey, we're late.
Yes.
But that you cannot get reception until you're at the middle of the bridge. So we knew that this was going to happen. So like Claire is trying to call 911, but we know there is no 911 call that's going to be received until she's at the middle of the bridge. So it's just freaking terrifying because we like know it's like this race against time and distance.
Does she stop in the middle of the bridge?
Stops.
She does.
Why did she stop?
I don't know.
This was definitely one of those like screaming, like, why are you stopping? Just keep drive to a police station, drive to a hospital, drive
to the halfway point of the bridge and finish making your call.
Right. So she kind of stops and then
drops the phone. And then I forget if she started to go again, but something happens where then she's like, as she's going, she sees the ghost.
She leans down. No, she doesn't see a ghost. She leans down and she gets up and Norman is in the
back.
Like in the back of the truck.
Breaks the window, like the window in the back of the truck, and starts, like, I think he grabs her, which is why she starts driving again.
She starts driving. The pole breaks through the window.
Well, and that is what I will say is kind of our final destination moment. So I feel like there's so many movies we've already covered in Spooky Sips that this movie has a nod to. But that's our final destination movie with the pole impaling,
coming right through.
And because the pole goes through, she off the bridge. And so
she does see the ghost of Madison.
Then she's going in the water. So she like swerves and then goes into the water. And so she just lands in the water. And then there's a fight.
Water is submerging.
There's a struggle of them trying to get out. And that's then when we see Madison again. This time her actual like corpse is starting to float up.
And like become almost more human a little bit.
Yes, and it's becoming like it's reversing. And
the decomposition,
she grabs Norman's leg and Claire is able to get out.
Yep.
And the
I wrote in my notes
Norman back.
In my notes I wrote MEF saves the day.
Yes. She does save the day.
She really does.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Well, so then they cut, you see Claire come up at the end. There's, emergency vehicles crossing the bridge to come because the call finally went through to 911 after they made the halfway point to the bridge. She's screaming for help before they get in the water. But then at the end, you see Claire go to the grave, the gravesite of Madison. Now that she has a grave, she's been buried. And one of the things that I love, if you haven't, I don't know about if you notice this one, but as the scene ends, the very last one, you can see the outline of Madison's face in the shadows in the snow of the graveyard.
Oh, I did not see that.
That pans out.
You got to go back and look at it. Okay. So as Claire's walking away from the grave, you just see the outline, her face in a darker patch of snow and the outline of her face. It's amazing.
It's very cool.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Yes, I watched it twice. I watched it with the director's commentary. He didn't bring it up.
They didn't say that.
I know. I'm surprised.
Notice that it was a red rose she gave too. So
yes.
That red color come back.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Oh, such a good movie.
Classic.
So good.
So good.
A classic. I love it.
I think a murder has happened around this book. I don't know what's gone on.
In the book.
Or in the book. And the
probably both.
It's the creepiest thing I think I've ever purchased.
I choose to believe someone bought it. Things went horribly wrong. They returned it. You have that book now.
Yes.
And there are stains on the book.
Of course there
Blood
are.
Blood stains?
Maybe.
Okay, yeah, you should definitely keep it around in a ring of salt.
It's the coolest. Maybe that's what I'll do.
All right. So on that note, should we get into the psych on this movie?
Let's get into psych.
So much.
Yes.
All right. So we've got a lot to discuss. The first thing I want to talk about is dissociative amnesia.
Ew.
And before you get into it, quick disclaimer, Laura's not a real doctor, but it's okay because they're not real people.
Sure are not. So, dissociative amnesia, aka repressed memories. I feel like we see a lot of that in this movie. Claire goes through the car crash and then she gets amnesia. And it's kind of hard to tell, is it that there's ghost presence? Or is it that Claire is her memories are trying to resurface? I think I think it's kind of a combination of the two. So there are dissociative amnesia it's a partial or total loss of important personal information. So sometimes it occurs suddenly or after a stressful or traumatic event. So catching your husband having an affair, purposely or an accident, running your car at 80 miles an hour into a tree, that's going to create possibly some dissociative amnesia.
Right.
So there's multiple types of amnesia. We have selective amnesia, and that's the inability to remember certain details of an incident. So that's normally going to happen after like I was saying, after a traumatic event. There's generalized amnesia, and that's just an inability to remember kind of anything about your past life. That doesn't really apply to Claire. She can remember before. It's just one chunk of time that she can't remember. There is systemized amnesia, and that's the loss of memory for only one selected types of information, which wouldn't that be so interesting? You can remember everything, but I'm going to just make up something stupid. If it has to do with the color orange, if it involved the color orange, you're not going to remember it. It's the selective type of amnesia.
Weird.
The systematic type where if it involves this one type of thing, you're not going to remember it. Or the, I'm not able to say this right. Ready? Posthypnotic amnesia. And that's where you can't remember something that happened during hypnosis. Which is actually really common because hypnosis kind of puts you, we've talked about this before, but it kind of puts you into this altered, very suggestible state of mind where you can't remember, you can remember memories brought out during the amnesia, but not actually the thing memories brought out during the hypnosis, but not actually like the hypnosis itself.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would say Claire for sure has the selective amnesia, where there's that one specific type of event or that specific trauma event that happened and she cannot remember it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because she goes to that party where the university party at the same house where the DuPont chair party had been held. And the woman comes up to her and is like, how have you been doing? She seems so concerned for her. And it turns out that's where she had seen Madison had turned up at the party and Claire saw her. And this was shortly before the whole accident. So it's all connected for her. It's all part of that, finding out your husband is a lying, cheating douchebag.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what we brought up before, where there's these like triggering things that happen where like you don't remember and you legit don't remember. But then suddenly these events happen where, you know, you see the picture of the insurance claim or you go to this party and like suddenly you're like, wait, and your brain is trying to protect itself by saying, I don't know what that is. Nothing to see here. Move on.
Well,
but
really could the car accident also be a part of it, right? Like if she hit her head, right? Traumatic brain injury.
Absolutely.
You know, part of it could have been that as well, like, which I think would help with forgetting, I guess, what happened.
And then I think people probably around her would be like her friend Jody, who was like, oh, well, I'm not going to bring up the affair that I was going to tell her about because she just had this big, you know, terrible event, this injury. We're not going to bring it up. And Norman is like, oh, I'm off the hook for this one. She doesn't remember that she saw me and Madison together. So in a way, the people around her kind of feed into that because they just go along with her not remembering.
Oh, totally. So for Claire, I'm going to diagnose. Whoa.
A lot of words.
How many lake house cocktails have you had, Laura?
I've had only 2. I'm going to diagnose Claire with dissociative amnesia, which, as we kind of discussed, is the inability to recall important autobiographical information. Usually it's of a traumatic or stressful nature, and it's inconsistent with ordinary forgetting. So like a lot of times, here's the thing, people's memories are shit. Like a lot of times you don't remember stuff, or you can have these kind of like false sense of memories. But this dissociative amnesia is not normal. It's like there's just this chunk of time you just cannot remember. And it causes significant distress in the individual, or impairment in their social, occupational, or important areas of functioning. So Claire not being able to remember that her husband had an affair, that she then like caught him with it, that definitely caused impairment in her functioning. Here's the part that gets tricky with the dissociative amnesia. It's not associated with physiological effects of either a substance or a neurological or other medical condition, which we don't have in Claire. But is it attributed to a ghost? So just something to consider, something to maybe you'd want to rule out with that. And the other thing is that normally with dissociative amnesia, you would say it's not better explained by like some other thing that's going on, which I do also think Claire has post-traumatic stress disorder. Just because she had this like big crazy event.
For sure.
So what's kind of curious about this, you know, repressed memories is that a lot of times it's accompanied by this fugue state. So dissociative fugue is really fascinating. It's this confusion over your personal identity. A lot of times it involves like either partial or complete assumption of a new identity. Which happens in Claire. So it's like you forget what you're like, you can't remember like the memories that you're making at that moment. You might partially or fully assume this new identity, and it is accompanied by this unexpected travel from home. So Claire goes to Adamant, Claire goes in the river. Like, is it really this ghost, or is she just in this fugue state?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Especially because she did see them together.
Yes.
So it is all
right.
stuff she experienced.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wild.
So it's like even more so,
Ooh.
was it a ghost or not? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that's really interesting about the dissociative amnesia is that there's a lot of controversy over memories. And we kind of talked about this before in like some previous episodes, like false memories and stuff, and hypnosis. It is common to repress memories of abuse. That's a coping mechanism. That's something that people do. It's very normal. But it's also common for invalid memories to happen, for people to, especially vulnerable people, to take suggestions of others and assume that those memories are true. And then really, like, you really remember something that never happened.
Well, it's sort of like, in a way, when you're younger and you hear a story about what you did when you were little, and then you think, oh, this is what I did when I was little. But do you really remember that? Or did you just have that story told to you multiple times? Like,
Exactly.
is it so ingrained in you that you assumed that memory, even though you don't really remember it?
Right.
Yeah. And so, speaking to that, there's actually, because this has been such a common thing where whether it's through hypnosis or through therapy, we kind of talked about this when we were talking about dissociative identity disorder, whereas like, is it really multiple personalities, or is it that the person buys into what the therapist is saying? Is there multiple personalities? There's actually this, it's called the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. And it happened as a result of, there were some people who went to therapy. They were going through some stuff, and then suddenly they remembered, oh, my dad sexually abused me as a kid. Come to find out, never happened. Like it just did not happen.
This was something that happened. Like, did this something that happened in like the 80s and 90s?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when it started.
Yeah.
And so
I feel like it was on episodes of TV shows and like, yeah.
So it's so hard because it's, in one kind of camp is this, if someone is remembering that something really bad happened to them, even if it's 20 years ago, they're thinking something bad happened to me, believe the person, because chances are something bad happened. But then there's this other camp where it's like, but false memories can be implanted to people. People can like suddenly think something bad happened just because of the stories that have been spun around them from like some symptoms they're experiencing now. So this False Memory Syndrome Foundation, it has like all of these articles and all of these things that they'll reference, because of, I think it started out from this dad that got falsely accused of abusing his daughter, which, how devastating would that be?
So scary.
Like it never happened, but the girl genuinely believes it happened. And the dude's like, no, this never did.
No, like that's terrifying.
I wonder what happens. I mean, I've seen episodes of like Law and Order or whatever, where this happens. Once people realize, oh crap, this didn't actually happen. How do they then go about moving forward?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Like, a lot of therapy.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, because it gets to this, and we'll talk about this in just a second. It gets to this mistrust of yourself, of others. Like, I can't trust what I remember. I can't trust what other people say. Like, I don't know what's going on.
How can you trust anyone at that point?
Yeah.
Like, what are you supposed to believe? What are you not supposed to believe? And it really gets to the thing where the only way you can know if your memories are real, if there's like this external corroboration, which how messed up would that be?
Yeah.
So false memories are wild, and like repressed memories are wild, because the brain does things to protect you, but it also can really mess you up.
Yeah.
So poor Claire was going through a lot.
I know.
She really was.
Yeah. She's going through it.
So in addition to that, moving on from that, I guess, we've alluded to this a little bit in some prior episodes, but gaslighting.
Yes.
Because that's what Norman does to Claire. I'm going to diagnose him with my official diagnosis of a gaslighter.
Yes. Wasn't that one of the words of the year for 2022, right? Like Merriam-Webster.
So. Yeah.
I think gaslight was like one of the top words of the year for 2022.
Oh, shit.
Well, I think a huge part of that too, and we kind of talked about that earlier, is how Norman feels like he has to live up to his father. There are multiple times in this where it's like people reference him when it was really his dad that did these amazing things. He's working at his dad's university. You know, his father passed, he got the DuPont chair, so he's taking over at his father's, school. All of these things, it's like he's never good enough, so he has to exercise some control somewhere. And for him, Claire is the perfect candidate for that. Yeah. He's able to control things where she isn't, working outside the home, and he is able to isolate and manipulate and control what she is experiencing in so many ways.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because first I have gaslighting, and then I'm going to talk about Norman's midlife crisis.
Oh my God. So typical. I feel like.
Feeds right in. It feeds right in. Yeah. So gaslighting is just it's this insidious form of manipulation where you deliberately and systematically give someone false information. And so Norman does it, and it leads Claire to just question, like, she doesn't know what is true about her own self. Right. She doubts her own memory, even though she's already got this, dissociative amnesia, but then she's doubting her own memory. She's doubting what she actually sees. She's doubting her own sanity.
Yeah.
And over time, gaslighter, their manipulations are just going to get more and more complex, which is totally what we see in Norman. Cause we see them start out with this like happy family, like happy relationship, and it seems great. As soon as Claire starts to diverge from what Norman is going to perceive as like this perfect happy life, he's got to kind of rein that in, pull her in.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that too is they do start the movie where you don't know that the daughter isn't their daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like this perfect ideal of, mom, dad, daughter going off to college. And then you realize, wait, this isn't perfect. There is a deeper history here. She was married before, husband passed away, he took them on. So, Claire and the daughter, the illusion starts to break down as you learn more about what is happening with them.
For sure.
Well, that's the thing about gaslighting. It's psychologically devastating. So we kind of mentioned it violates the trust that people are generally good. And it makes you suspicious of everyone around you, but like even more so yourself. And it can make it easy for you to kind of forget what you value about your own self. And I think we see that with Claire. She's this mother, she's this cellist, she's this like wonderful, bright woman, but she then gives up. I think that's why we don't see her playing the cello in the movie, because she's been gaslit into think she's not good enough for that. She's not, that's not her identity. Her only identity is just this vulnerable state of just being Norman's wife.
Yeah.
Well, she argues that with him at some point. She says, I gave up everything for you. When she sort of remembers what happens. I gave up everything. And he said, I never asked you to do that. And she said, you never expected anything less than perfect.
Yeah. Right.
That's exactly what he wanted. He wanted the perfect wife who stayed at home and doted on him and their child, even though it wasn't his child, the perfect home, all of these things, because it all had to live up to this perception that he had.
Yeah.
That he had to live up to for his father.
Yep.
So before we move on from gaslighting, I will just give a plug for the movie Gaslight. It is
just a quick plug.
It is not a horror movie, but it is an epic movie.
So good.
About this man who just tortures his wife, making her think she's going crazy. And it's so good. Paula and Gregory are the stars of the movie.
Yes. Ingrid Bergman, right?
Yeah, it's so good.
So good.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so now I have busted out my lifespan development textbook.
Oh wow.
To talk about do we want to talk about Claire or Norman first? What like their main thing is? Let's talk about Norman. Okay, so this is getting back to one of our very first episodes. We were talking about some psych theory, and we were talking about Erikson's stages of development. Does anyone remember?
Yes, I remember this. Yes.
Okay. So normally people talk about Erikson's stages of development when they're talking about like kids, growing up, and like that's when a lot of the stages are going like happening. But Erikson did have a 7th stage of development, and it was generativity versus stagnation. So this is what I think is going on with Norman. So generativity, that is your desire to have a legacy of yourself that goes through the next generation. So Nicole, this is exactly where we get to where Norman is kind of that generativity is challenged because people keep talking about his dad. Like he's supposed to have his own legacy, and he did not have his own kid. Claire had a kid. Yeah. But like his own legacy is being challenged in this because what is he leaving to the next generation? Sure, he's been published.
He has the same name as his father, Dr. Spencer. I mean, everyone refers to him by the same name that his father did. So how does he build his own legacy when they're all when him and his dad are referred to as the same title?
And this is something that happens, between like your 40s to 60s, I think, where it's like, okay, you've had like all of these other stages of life, but now it's like about, okay, well, what am I leaving now? Like what is me now that I'm like getting to this point where I'm not developing more. I'm kind of just like, I've reached my peak.
Yeah.
And so even though he's this accomplished guy, he's published, he's successful, still everyone always talks about his dad.
Yeah.
And I feel like that
Claire even says to him, "You're always so sensitive about this." And he kind of clips her off and goes, "Well, I guess I'll have to be more careful of that." He knows that this is something in a way that he's dealing with, but he also doesn't want to deal with it in any way, I think.
So like if you're not going to get this generativity where you are leaving this legacy and you're contributing to future generations, the reverse side is that you have stagnation. And that's also called self-absorption. And that's where you sense that you've done nothing for the next generation. You're going to die and it doesn't matter. Like no one will remember you. No one will care.
We have a sound clip for, advertising this episode.
Really depressing, right?
If that doesn't sum up me turning 40 in a few weeks, I don't know what does.
So it's one of those things where like people joke around about midlife crisis. It's like the guy who like dyes his hair. Like I'm thinking of Father of the Bride. The guy dyes his hair. He goes gets the red convertible. Like, but at the same time, it's like if you don't feel like you're leaving this solid legacy or you're benefiting the next generation, maybe you're going to revert to those earlier stages of development. Those earlier stages of life where you're then, kind of like procreating, spreading your seed because your seed at this point, you
starting over again in a way.
Yeah. So it also kind of ties to like if you're not having this generativity, you have this identity certainty, which it could be a good or a bad thing. So like if it's a good thing, you have this sense of being your own person. You feel like your life is moving well, and you feel secure and committed to what you're doing. So that's like a positive sense of identity certainty. Whereas I think what we see a bit more in Norman is that you just have this turmoil and confusion about your impulses and your potential. So like the impulse to kill your wife, most people wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah.
You feel like you're coming near the end of the road but you're not finding another one. So like there's this end of this road with Norman like raising a kid, even though it was not biologically his. And he's become this, he's had this life in academia, but even though he's been successful, it hasn't led to much, but there's nothing else he could do.
Like he's also not teaching actively anymore, and he's doing more research.
Yeah, he's not even teaching.
Dinner, and the friend of Claire's is like, "Oh, so you're not teaching? Oh, okay."
Yes,
like the very like, well, then what good are you? Like, kind of.
Exactly.
So if he's not doing that, and it's almost like Claire at the beginning, he says something like, "Oh, we almost got this, push in the research, and she goes, "Oh, the prenatal thing, like, oh, you're genius," like, just like she has to build up his ego to maintain that for him. Yeah,
for sure.
So he has this search, like he's searching for a sense of who he is now, and he's not finding it. He's wishing he had a wider scope to his life. So even though he's done so much, like he feels like he wishes it was bigger, better, like more like his dad's. And that he just has this anxiety. He's not going to live up to the opportunities that his dad set up for him. He's just not living up to what he feels like he should be doing.
Well, he will have a legacy of being a killer. So
he's got one legacy.
Murder,
So it's not in the DSM, but I'm going to go ahead and unofficially diagnose Norman with narcissism and also midlife crisis.
Yeah, that's a fair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Between the affair and the murder and everything. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But for Claire, we've already talked about, I'm going to go ahead and diagnose her with the dissociative amnesia, but also empty nest.
Oh, that makes sense.
We were talking about this a little bit, empty nest syndrome, in that actually statistically women do get this more than men do.
Oh.
Yeah.
So yes.
I feel like that makes sense.
Caitlin was Claire's biological baby, but like women statistically are going to get this more.
Fair.
And really it's a psychological condition. It does affect both parents. But it can be that you experience grief, loss, fear. You just feel like you're not able to do things. You can't adjust to your new roles. And really it's this change of parental relationships. So typically empty nest is going to lead to this decrease in marital satisfaction when the role of your relationship was raising the kid. So conversely, if that was not your role and the kids leave, you actually have an increase in marital satisfaction.
Oh, interesting.
When your kids leave.
But it makes sense.
Yeah. But typically empty nest is going to be that, your role just in your satisfaction in your marriage and your life is going to go down. Your kid has left college and, what's your purpose kind of. It's a little bit like midlife crisis, but just slightly different. So I think Claire's got that empty nest syndrome. You can see that in the symptoms would be like sadness. You feel like you have this feeling of loss, depression, loneliness, distress. You're worried and anxious. Your life has no purpose, so you start spying on your neighbors through the hole in the fence.
That's normal behavior, Laura. Okay.
There's increase in marital tension because your husband is trying to kill you because he just killed the mistress.
Yes.
Things like that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm gonna diagnose everyone with.
Yeah. These seem fair.
Yeah. So there's my psych.
So nice. That was a good breakdown.
That was a very good breakdown.
Yeah.
I agree. Well done.
I do have fun facts. Okay. So this movie was directed by Robert Zemeckis. You may have heard of him. He did, small little movies like the Back to the Future trilogy, Forrest Gump, Castaway.
Gosh.
Small film. You may have heard of him. He actually filmed this movie while taking a break from Castaway. So they took like a little break halfway through filming that movie so Tom Hanks could lose weight and grow a beard. And during that break,
didn't
he's
that
like,
movie take a crazy long time to film too?
Yeah. So they were like, let's just film this. That makes a lot of sense. He said it was super stressful and would not ever do it again.
That's insane.
But yeah.
Well, this is such a psychological movie. How do you just take a break with another one to dive into this one?
With another amazing movie.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
Both such good movies.
Like another big movie with amazing actor. Yeah.
Also one of my favorite Halloween costumes my husband and I did was
so good.
Wilson and the volleyball, or the character and Wilson, the volleyball. Yeah.
So good.
Can you explain this a little bit more, Nicole?
Yes. So my husband, who had a beard at the time, went as Tom Hanks' character, all shaggy and disheveled, and I went as Wilson the volleyball. I had a headband with little raffia corn husks sticking up from my head, and I had a white shirt it was just red paint, but a bloody handprint on it for Wilson. It was really fun.
We're going to need to post those.
We might need to. If you're okay with it,
I'm sure I can get you a photo.
Yeah. That's amazing. So Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer were the director's first choices for the movie. He kind of knew immediately when reading it. For Harrison Ford, he knew he wanted someone who had never played a villain before in an effort to make us not suspect him as the villain. I mean, he had only really been a hero in movies. And I think to this day, this is still his only horror movie, as far as I saw.
Interesting.
He did so good in it.
He did. Yeah, no, he was great in this. So he just knew from the beginning, and luckily they both just agreed to it. It was one of those, the first choices were totally on board. Harrison Ford read the script and he was like, yeah, let's do it. Michelle Pfeiffer, I think, read the script, and there are a lot of technical weird aspects about this movie. We already talked about all the crazy camera stuff that they did. So she was a little more hesitant about taking it on, but she ended up deciding to go with it, which,
oh, I'm so glad.
I love. I'm happy she did. Okay, let's see what else. One thing that they talked about a lot in the director's commentary, and when I say a lot, I mean, if I had $1 for every time that this guy said Hitchcock, I would be very wealthy. Because I get it. He wanted to make this movie in the Hitchcock style. His whole thing was if Hitchcock was around and making movies at this time, he would want to do it. So he knew he wanted the heroine of the movie to be blonde because that was Hitchcock's style.
Yeah.
He named Harrison Ford's character Norman, Psycho. He, in the bathroom scene where Michelle Pfeiffer's character pulls down the shower curtain, that was supposed to be reminiscent of Psycho.
I thought of Psycho.
Of the shower.
Yes.
It is. I'm not gonna lie. The director's commentary was made me like this movie a little bit less because I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. You copied Hitchcock. He said his name probably 30 times.
Oh my god!
Now it almost makes me yet again. I will the next time I watch it. I feel like I'll have that in the back of my mind.
Oh yeah,
and kind of the nods to it. I don't need to hear Hitchcock's name mentioned 30 times, but yeah.
But yeah, so there was a lot of inspiration from Psycho, and I think it was The Room was the other one of Hitchcock's movies that he pulled a lot of influence from to make these movies.
I have to say, I feel like we've seen so many movies where there've been a lot of those film noirs and a lot of those camera angles and shots and the triangles that they do in the the different frames or whatever. I didn't pick up on the Hitchcock so much in this, a couple things with Norman and with the shower, but I
like the camera angle on the floor.
I can see the camera angles, the mirrors, that's not something that everyone takes advantage of.
I just feel like they should just embrace that it was their own thing, because I didn't watch this and think, this makes me think of Hitchcock, like I have with so many other movies.
Yeah.
I thought this was kind of its own thing. And I guess that if you're paying homage to Hitchcock, great. But I don't feel like you should kind of ride those coattails, because it was its own thing.
It was its own thing. No, yeah, I know. I agree.
I almost think of it now that, I said, I've probably watched this movie 20 plus times and I've never thought, oh, Hitchcock. But looking back, I can see, oh, that's a nod to to Hitchcock, not a whole tribute.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we talked about the house a little bit, all the mirrors and stuff. So both the primary house and the neighbor's house were built. Like they designed the movie, or they designed the houses specifically for the movie, and a lot of it was because the layout was so important for the story.
Yeah.
You know, they knew that they needed certain angles to work with the mirror. They knew that they needed Claire to look over the fence in certain parts. Like so much of it was already predetermined by the script that it was kind of impossible to find a house that already met all of these conditions. So they built both of them near the lake, and then they also built both of them on a sound stage. So they were both built twice in order to make this movie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Impressive.
So they really went all out.
The amount of resources that are used to make movies is just mind-boggling to me.
It really is.
They also designed the therapist's office that we talked about a little bit, and they did want to make his office be in the basement to be a nod of, what lies beneath.
Yes, I did pick up on that. It's below street level. You're noticing other people walking by above through the windows.
Yes.
Us psychologists are like the shady gremlins of the world. Like,
the underground gremlins.
with our fireballs and our... I don't know.
Let's see. Another thing, they did intentionally want the story to take place over the course of months, starting with the summer where everything is nice and bright and happy, and then going into fall, winter, where, as the season gets colder and darker, the movie also gets colder and darker. So it's kind of like an additional way to represent what was happening.
I like that.
Yeah. No, I actually really liked that. Let's see. Oh, I don't know if we talked about the scene when they're at the dinner party and the Fears are both there, who we realize, that she is alive and well. And then the husband pretends to choke her, when they look over and he's like, ah. That was improvised.
Was that improvised?
Yeah, he just improvised that scene, but they liked it so much because in a movie like this, you need comedic relief.
Yes.
And so they kind of loved it, and the timing was perfect, so they kept it into the movie.
Oh my God, that makes me like the actor so much more.
Right?
I know.
Yes.
Like just be a real creep about it, but embrace it.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. In the scene where Claire goes to the small town, I'm forgetting the name.
Adamant. Inanimate.
Yeah, when she goes to Adamant, the store that sells the necklace and where she sees the chest with the keys is called the Sleeping Dog. And so that was also kind of a pun where it's like she could have left Sleeping Dogs Lie, but instead, chose to go there and pursue this.
Yep.
Is it a real store,
No, I don't think so.
That would be amazing if
I think
it was.
they just wanted a pun. Let's see. Okay, in an interview with Drew Barrymore, Michelle Pfeiffer was talking to her about how her performance, to study for it, she watched Scream, like Drew Barrymore's performance in Scream.
Interesting.
But then they realized that Drew Barrymore had actually watched Michelle Pfeiffer's character in Scarface.
Oh my God.
And had actually taken a picture of her, like of Michelle Pfeiffer in Scarface, to her wig maker and basically said, "Make me look like her."
Oh my
for
gosh.
Scarface. Or sorry, for Scream.
Oh my gosh.
This is
Michelle Pfeiffer's screams in this are amazing.
Yes.
And I can't believe we didn't talk about this earlier, but her screams are quintessential horror movie terror screams. Like they're so good.
No, she nailed the horror scream.
That is
good.
That is such an incestual roundabout story of Michelle Pfeiffer and Drew Barrymore.
Inspired by each other.
I love that. I love that so much.
Okay, the last fun fact I have for you guys is that there were two, I think, writers that were credited for this movie. The story written by was oh my gosh, how do you pronounce her? Sarah Kernochin originally wrote the story for this movie. She wrote it for Steven Spielberg, who was working on an untitled ghost story for DreamWorks. So they knew that they wanted a ghost story. They had sent it to her. She wrote a whole story that was very different from what we watched. In her original story, it kind of had a similar setup in that it was like an empty nest couple who started to experience signs of a ghost, specifically with the woman experiencing more of them. But the ghost was actually going to be a housewife that had lived there, I think. And her hauntings were more her doing her daily tasks and chores and stuff. So like something that they would experience was like you'd smell like fresh baked cookies, you know? It's like, wait, where's that coming from?
Best haunting ever.
So, yeah,
that sounds boring too, though.
That sounds like a totally different movie.
Yes, it's a completely different movie. So she wrote it, and DreamWorks, the studio, they took it and they gave her notes basically saying, you know, like tweak this and that and this and that. Like, you know, they came up with their own, like, we want more jump scares. So it was a haunted version of, you know, what I just said.
Right.
And then she sent it to the studio. The studio came back and it was like, oh, actually make it sexier. She was like, what? Like that. Like, what do you want me to do with it? That also doesn't seem like a Spielberg film. Like that doesn't really match up. And so eventually they like Sarah, the writer, and the studio kind of mutually agreed to just move on. Because she had gotten another movie, like another one of her scripts picked up, and they, you know, had other stuff to do, and Spielberg wasn't really into it. So they held on to the script for years before they brought it to the director of this movie. They were like, hey, like, we have this script lying around if you want to play around with it. And that's when it was rewritten by, I didn't catch his name, but it's the other writer that's credited in this. He rewrote it to what it is now. So I thought that was interesting that it was like this thing that they just sat with. They went through a couple different drafts of it. And then after a while, it just kind of moved on to someone else.
Interesting.
I can't believe that, because to me, this is one of the best. Like, this is one of the top tier ones.
Agreed.
So good. And I can't believe they just sat on it.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it changed a lot. I mean, the story seems completely different from what the original one was.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where I think it was a director first got the story and it was like, yeah, there's something here. It was Clark Gregg who ended up rewriting it for this movie. So it was like they saw something in it that they liked and then rewrote it to what we, you know, eventually got. Yeah, I thought that was interesting, you know. How many stories do, you know, all these studios have just kind of sitting around?
No, it's true if you think about it.
Yeah. Okay, that was my last fun fact.
Okay, so we're going to do something kind of different this time. We're going to chat with our guest star, get some info on her, and let's just jump right in. So I'll start. Nicole, what is your favorite scary movie?
So it's so tough because I feel like I go through favorite genres or like favorite times where I really want to watch movies. This is one of my favorite ones by far. Yeah. I also really love The Haunting of Emily Rose.
Oh, I haven't watched that one. I've heard of it.
I've heard of that one. That is such a good one.
I really like, and I know this kind of goes into, you know, my favorite genre, but I really like psychological movies that just take you to a place where you think, what's really going on? So yeah, but this is probably one of my top favorite ones. But I also really like Haunting of Emily Rose.
Ooh, okay.
Great
yes.
choices.
Yes. Okay, we'll add that one to the queue.
It's really good.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go next. What is your least favorite scary movie?
You know, there was like a scary movie that, and now I'm blanking on the name of it, but it was like a zombie, like apocalypse. It was like not Evil Dead, because I know that's not it, but it was one of those, like, they came out in the like early 2000s, and it just was this like horror slasher zombie movie, and it just had there was no story behind it.
Was it 28 Days?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That I didn't like because it just there wasn't any story behind it.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think zombies can be really hard to pull off.
Yeah,
because innately they're scary, right? But also they're cheesy. So...
It is.
Yeah, and they almost always go over the top with it.
Yes.
And lose all story.
The gore, just for the gore's sake of it, is not There needs to kind of be reason behind it for me to make it more realistic. Because if it's not semi-realistic, then I'm not going to be able to get into it enough to believe it.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do the next one. Can you remember your first scary movie, or maybe even just the one that was like your first most memorable scary movie experience?
So there was one when I was probably in 4th grade, and I've never been able to actually find this movie. So if anyone knows what it is, that would be amazing.
All right, sippers, let us know.
Yes.
So it was some movie that I saw on cable TV, and it was about this woman, and there were kind of like, not quite zombies, but they were like unalive people. So she had to go through this whole experience where other people were coming after her for something. Again, they weren't quite like zombies, but they were undead people that came after her, and she had to fix something in order for them to stop coming after her. And I watched it alone when I was in 4th grade after we had moved to a new town, a new city, and I was babysitting Laura and Brianna when you guys were younger by myself. And it was like a 2-part movie over the course of 2 movies. It terrified me. I could not sleep for multiple nights in a row and loved it so much.
So sippers, if you know this movie, reach out to us.
I honestly
it was like
no idea.
Some on cable, because we had cable, which was a new thing to us where we moved.
Right.
And it was like undead or night of something, but I've never been able to find it. The other one is, which seems silly now because it's not really a horror movie, but Jurassic Park when I was younger came out, and it was such a big deal at the time. And one of my best friend's fathers watched it, and I remember him coming after the movie the next day telling us, I was over at her house, and she said, my dad is terrified of this movie. Like, he is so scared of this. And I somehow convinced my parents to see it in theater, and it scared me, like, in such a realistic way. And that's probably the other one that I really remember seeing firsthand when I was
now, do you remember what year it was where you watched this movie? I'm going to find this movie.
Oh God. It probably would have been 4th grade. So
like, loosely.
Let's see. I was born in 1983. So, I was probably like 9. So probably like 1992 or something.
Okay.
Okay.
Somewhere around there.
We're going to find it.
Early 90s, I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I've looked, and it's like there's not Night of the Living Dead, not
one of those.
Something like that. I know. Maybe one day I'll find that movie.
Okay, we're gonna find it.
We will. We're on a mission now. We're on a mission.
Okay, so you already answered the question about your favorite genre, so this will be your last one.
Yeah.
What is your favorite beverage to sip on?
Ooh, I really love a good gin and tonic with ideally a little bit of smoked rosemary in it. It's probably my favorite. A smoked rosemary gin and tonic.
Fancy.
Delicious.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds so good.
That does sound good. I would have one of those right now.
That sounds great.
It's really tasty with just like a hint of smokiness. Somehow you like trap it in the beverage and a little bit of lime. Perfect.
Sounds so good.
Okay, yeah, we might need to do that, as a drink for one of our movies.
For sure.
Sounds great.
Okay, well, before we close out, I just want to say thanks for being on the show, Nicole.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Thank you for having me. This was lovely.
Yeah, this was a great pick too.
Yes,
this was fun to watch.
Oh yeah,
The classic.
All right, so here on Spooky Sips, we don't give stars, we give sips. So Nicole, what we do is out of 5 sips, we rate our movies. So out of 5 sips, how many sips do you give this movie?
Solid 5.
Oh.
Okay.
So this is like a smoked rosemary gin and tonic for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I would say for me, it is so close to a perfect, but I like mine to be a little darker. I like to get I like to get weird and I like to get dark. So I'm going to give this one a 4.5 sip.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of thinking along the same lines. I feel like I like mine just a little spookier because this movie is so good. Like, I usually take notes when we watch our movies. I just stopped taking notes and started just watching the movie because I got so into it. But I do want it to be a little hint spookier. So I was also thinking a 4.5. Yeah.
I'm going to round this sandwich out and say I agree with Nicole. This for me is a perfect 5.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love this movie. Like, so far, the only movies that have gotten a perfect 5 for me are Psycho and this one. And I do also really, really like the darker movies, but something about the story, the psychology, the characters, this movie's a 5 for me. I would watch it again and again and again, and I have, and I will continue to do. So it's a perfect 5.
All right, so that brings us to next time on Spooky Sips. We're getting weird, you guys. We're getting real weird, and we're watching Lamb. So if you haven't seen Lamb yet, get sipping and get watching and hear our breakdown on this movie next time.
It'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting one.
Well, we will see you next time on Spooky Sips. Okay, bye.
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 Thank you for listening to Spooky Sips. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening. To stay up to date on all the spooky things we're up to, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at spookysips_podcast. And if you want to help support the podcast, consider buying us a coffee, or really a cocktail. We are completely independent, so every little bit goes a long way to keeping our podcast running and improving. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.